Welcome back everybody, hope you're doing well. Today's video is basically one long build video about the Oase ScaperLine 90. I've set this tank up at the end of March of this year. It's now beginning of August, so I would say it's just over 4 months old. Now usually when I do a build video, it's everything from start to finish and the video is like 10-15 minutes long. But because this tank is quite big, I also really want to take my time with it, so I've split it up into separate episodes. So this video is all those episodes combined, and I've made some cuts and edits to make it look like it's one long build video. And also at the end of this video we're going to come back to it, see how it looks 4 months later, and kind of go over everything that's has changed and things that went well, things that didn't go so well. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Okay, we've managed to get through all 3 layers of cardboard, so it's definitely well protected. Now let's remove all this foil. Yeah, like I'm able to do that with one hand. Wow, I know it's just a glass box, but this is a very nice glass box. Let me actually put the light on so we can get a proper look at the glass. That's much better. So yeah, Oase ScaperLine 90. Well, I think everybody has kind of seen it by now. Definitely not the first one to have this tank. So it's 90 centimeters. I think it's 45 by 45. And then the glass has these mitred edges. Super nice. Okay, let's move on to the cabinet. Okay, so that's the cabinet cleaned up as well. They give you this wooden plate to basically place between the cabinet and the glass. But I kind of broke mine when I was lifting it up the stairs. So I think I'm going to skip this wooden plate and go for a foam mat instead. Hope that's okay. Let's take a look inside. Okay, so we have the slide out drawer. We have the magnets on the door. Then what else do we have? Over here there's a little handle, I guess for your fishnet and your towel, stuff like that. We have a gap over there. I'm not sure if that's for the filter, for the hoses. I think this is removable, we can use that for the hoses, but I'll show you that in a minute. Then we also have a gap in the back for all your electrical wires, stuff like that. And then on the bottom we have some holes. That is, I think, for the adjustable feet. That's perfect because my floors are very uneven, so I'm definitely going to need that. Well, current situation is not very good. Not good like that either, so let me grab an Allen key and let's actually see. Oh, they include an Allen key in here as well, so let me grab that one, let me adjust the feet and then we can put the tank back on. Took a little bit of time, but we got it done. Let's see the level thingy. That is good. And that looks good enough. And there it is in its full glory. That looks really good. Okay, so let's see, we're going to have the external canister filled on this side, of course. The question is, what am I going to be keeping on the shelf? Probably just some fertilizers, some fish food, just a few supplies, nothing special really. So yeah, let's just put the shelf in the middle for now. Nice, there's the shelf in, and I've also covered the holes for the adjustable feet. So they give you 6 of those really tiny white covers, just to make it look super clean, you know.
A few moments later.
So I've basically just been decorating the inside of the cabinet. So here on the right side I have my 2-hour Aquarius fertilizer, the Oase Organics food line, my Seachem products, on the bottom the power plug for the light and also for the CO2 system. Yeah, now it's complete with the Oase Biomaster. I haven't been using the Biomaster in a while. On the Big Shallow I was using a different filter, but I feel like for this set we just have to use the Biomaster, right? So yeah, I could hook it up already, but I don't have any glass lily pipes actually for this tank. I need to buy some big glass lily pipes set, and then we can hook up the filter. So I think for now this is it. Okay, back home from a pretty successful shopping trip. I've got 2 pieces of really nice spider wood, and then I also bought roughly 8 kilos of a type of lava rock. Now normal like red or black lava rock is sometimes a little bit boring and pretty straight. This stuff, however, has a lot more like detail to it, a lot more, yeah, just really nice edges, you know. So yeah, I've got roughly 8 kilos of this stuff, and I already had a little bit of it at home, so we should have enough to play around with. Now those pieces of wood are quite clean, but the rocks are relatively dirty. They're just very dusty, so I'm just going to give them a rinse under the tap, and then we can get started on our layout. Okay, so the rocks are all clean. The wood is pretty much ready to go as well. Now one thing with rocks is I would always recommend to try to find like a mix of different sizes. So over here I got a couple of big ones, and then on this side we have mostly smaller ones, because it's just very difficult to make a nice hardscape layout if you only have rocks that are all the same size, you know. So always try to go for a mixed size. I think the next step is to go for a bit of a dry test run. So I'm going to get some hardscape in the tank, just play around a little bit, and then see if we can come up with something nice. Okay, so of course I already had a play around in the store, so I kind of already know what I want to make, but maybe you don't. Let's say this is your first time, or I don't know, you don't really have any inspiration. How do you get started? I think the best way to get started in this case is just by placing some things, some materials inside the tank. So just find your nicest piece of wood or your nicest rock, place it in the tank and just start playing around and just, yeah, see how it looks. Maybe change the angle, maybe like this. And just keep doing that until you find something that looks good, that looks pleasing to the eye, and then you start and you move on from there. Now another thing that always really helps me is to make a decision on the kind of the shape of the layout. So either a triangular style shape, convex shape, or a concave shape. Let me just quickly demonstrate that. So if this piece of wood would be our only piece of hardscape, we could actually make a pretty nice convex layout, or also referred to as an island style layout. So we place this hardscape directly in the center. Keep the left side and the right side open as much as possible, and just focus on the plant growth in the middle as well. So we could really like, yeah, almost create like an island style layout. That would be pretty cool. Then triangular style, if you just move it to the left side, we could do a triangular style like this and have the plants starting high on the left and moving down lower to the right. We could do a triangular style layout in the opposite direction as well. So have plants high on this side and much lower on that side. If you want to go for a concave style layout, you would have hardscape on the right side as well as on the left side, and keep the center area mostly open. Now I really love to do triangular style layouts. I actually currently have a few. So there's one on this side. Yeah, so it's mostly triangular like this. With the stem plants on the right side, you still need to grow a little bit taller. I have one here in the opposite direction, so it's very tall on the left side and much lower on the right side. And here we have another triangular style. So stem plants still need to grow a little bit taller on the left side, but once they do, we have a nice shape like this. And I'm going to go for a triangular style in this tank as well. Basically with the way the wood sits right now, I'll adjust it a little bit, but we'll have tall stem plants on this side and then lower plants on that side. So it's going to be a triangular style like this. And the reason I chose that is because over here we have our couch. So this is where we sit at night. Maybe we'll watch a movie, maybe we'll have some dinner, and then I can still view the tank from the side as well. So it's viewable from the front, but also from the side. And if we would flip that around, and I would have a triangular style like this, like it wouldn't be as nice, because then on this side would be a lot of hardscape, a lot of tall stem plants, and it wouldn't really look, it'd be as pleasurable to view from this side, you know. So something you can think about as well whenever you're making a new hardscape. Think about the placement of the tank, see from which side you view it the most, maybe just from the front, but maybe from the side as well. And think about that with how you make your layout. So for this particular layout, I'm going to add in the substrate first. Of course, I'm using AQUASOIL, and then I'm going to add the hardscape on top of that. It doesn't always have to be like that. Sometimes I can also add in the hardscape first and do the substrate after that. It just kind of depends on what you're making, and it also depends on if you're using just AQUASOIL or just plant substrate, or using plant substrate and sand. If you're using sand in the foreground, for example, it's a lot easier to first add in the hardscape, create a proper barrier, and then add the substrate in the back and the sand in the foreground, you know. But for this particular layout, I'm going with just AQUASOIL, just plant substrate, and no sand. Now when it comes to smoothing out the soil, I always see people using these sort of like called sand flatteners. I'm actually not really a big fan of those. I much rather use a large paintbrush, just a little bit smoother. Even if you hit this against the glass, you know, there's nothing wrong. But if you hit this against the glass, I don't know, I just don't really like the sound of that, so I'd much rather use a paintbrush. Yeah, I can see there's not really enough. I want to go for like roughly 5 centimeters in front and almost double, like 10-12 centimeters in the back. So I'm going to add a little bit more AQUASOIL. So I found some leftover AQUASCAPE soil, I found some leftover Amazonia version 2, and I found some leftover Tropica soil. The Tropica is actually the powder variant, so it's a much smaller grain. So I'm going to save that till last, finish the Hardscape first, and then add a nice thin layer of the powder soil on top. Okay, there's most of the substrate in. I've kind of brushed it away from the front glass. Later on we're going to fill that in with the powder soil so we don't mix the two different grain sizes. It's not really a big deal, but if we can try to avoid it, then it would be nice. And of course a nice slope towards the back, just to help increase that sense of depth. Yeah, I think we can now start adding in our hardscape. Good thing about the substrate as well is that it kind of acts as a cushion, so once you place in the hardscape it just stands up a lot easier, you know. You can kind of just push it in and it will just stand on its own. We don't need to support it with rocks anymore, so yeah, see, that's looking good. This one is not super straight anymore. This one has a nice flow towards that area. I like that. So at this point, a lot of it is just like experimenting and trial and error. You just have to start adding things, start moving things, tilt it this way, that way, until you're happy with it, you know? Like same thing with the rocks. I like to just look at the rocks, see which side has the most detail, which side looks the best, and then make sure that that side is facing forward. But I'll probably move it like 100 times until I'm happy with it. Especially with this thing, you know, like this is my biggest setup. And I want to make sure that this one looks really, really good. So I'm going to take my time with it. And this is also the time where you have to like get it in the zone, get it in the focus mode. And I'm also going to put the camera, well, I'm not going to put the camera away, but I'm going to put the microphone away and just get in the zone and just enjoy the process. Alright, it's now the next day. Yesterday I left it like this. I was really happy with it. And this morning I woke up, still happy with it, so that's good. Sometimes it's good to take a few days and every day you can come back and make some adjustments. But yeah, overall it's just good to take your time with hardscaping. So the next step is to secure the hardscape. Because I'm lazy and impatient, I didn't pre-soak the wood, so it's still very dry and it's going to float up. So of course I could just add a rock on top of the wood, that should keep it down, but I don't really like how that looks. I'd much rather just glue it to the rocks that we have right now. Because we use lava rocks, sometimes a little bit tricky. I mean, normal lava rocks are quite porous and they still very light. So if you would glue a piece of wood to a very light lava rock, it's just, yeah, both of them are just going to float up. These lava rocks, however, are quite dense and they're still quite heavy, so should be no problem. I'm going to use my favorite technique, cotton pads and liquid super glue. I showed this many times already on my channel, but it's just very easy. I'm just going to take a little bit of this cotton pad, wedge it in between the points that I want to connect, then add a few drops of liquid super glue, just to saturate that cotton pad. It's going to stick everything together, super easy. So if we look at this biggest piece of wood, it's touching a rock here, so we can connect it there. We can connect it somewhere over here, in front of here maybe as well, and then another one in the back over there. So then we have 4 points where the wood is connected to the rocks should be enough to keep it down. Okay, everything is stuck together, but right now I do have quite a lot of that cotton pad visible. Kind of want to cover that up. So I've poured a little bit of AQUASOIL in this cup. I'm kind of just gonna crush it into a very fine powder. And then we'll use that AQUASOIL powder to cover up the cotton pads. Okay, so everything is secure. We can do a little test. Nothing is really moving anymore. This one's still a little bit flexible, but it's not going to float up, so that's fine. So the only thing left to do now is to finish the substrate. I have the Tropica powder AQUASOIL. I'm just going to pour it in the front here, and then we should be done. So I think that's the hardscape done, guys. I'm really happy with it. Of course, by no means is this a very complicated hardscape. It's actually very simple. We just have 2 pieces of wood and a couple rocks, but yeah, it's kind of my style. I like to keep things simple. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you might have noticed that already. Very simple hardscapes, and then I like to make it look pretty with a lot of plants in there. So can't wait to see this planted as well. I just remembered that I still wanted to add a background to the aquarium. So I'm going to add a layer of this glass foil to the back glass of the aquarium. In the future I might upgrade to one of those fancy light screens. I currently have one on my 70 Escapers tank, but I know I don't really use it that often and it's quite pricey, so I'm not sure yet. For now we're going to go with the glass foil. Okay, tank is filled up, or almost filled up. I just finished fitting the lily pipes and the hoses. Now it's time to prime the filter. The filter is going to take up another, well, 10-15 liters of water, I guess. So then we can fill all the way to the top and yeah, call it a day, I guess. Okay, we've got a lot of plants to work with, guys. So my inspiration for this layout basically came from a tank from the 88 gallery in Japan. I saw a video about it on YouTube and I have a picture, I'll overlay the picture right now. So I tried to order as many, sort of similar plants. Yeah, so we've got loads of Dwarf Hairgrass for the foreground, a couple pots of moss for the wood, different types of crypts over here, some really nice anubias, normal hairgrass, and then loads of stems. Got the Ludwigia super red, Hygrophila polysperma, and then loads of rotalas as well. So yeah, this is going to be quite a challenge to prepare everything, so let me just get started right away. Okay, so I think that was like roughly 1 hour of plant preparing condensed into like 5 or 6 seconds, so definitely took some time, but we got there in the end. I still have a few pots left. We can always prepare more if we need it, but I think for now we've got quite a lot already. So this looks really good, just loads of really healthy plants. I think the next step is to drain the tank and get started. Yeah, let's start draining the water. It's actually quite clear. Yesterday it was quite cloudy, so I did a small water change, but today the water is crystal clear, so that's good. Okay, water is drained, so we can begin planting. I'm going to start with the dwarf hairgrass, of course in the foreground, but I also want to make a curve along towards the back. So we're going to have like a little curve over here, maybe a little bit in this section as well, but we'll have to see. Obviously this is going to take a long time. I have a lot of plants and a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to put on some music, do a time lapse on the camera and just enjoy the process. Okay, we got a good amount of hairgrass in already. I'm probably going to add more later, but for now I want to move on to some crypts. So the crypts are going to go between the rocks and the wood, and I'm probably going to have some empty spaces after that. Then I can fill it in with more hairgrass. Okay, the first crypt going in is the Wendtii compact. I also used this one in the first layout of the Big Shallow and I really loved it there. Looks really good. Dark brown leaves. I have 3 pots of this one and I'm thinking to just keep them. I mean, I could split the pot up into smaller portions, but I'm actually just going to keep these as it is. The second crypt going in is the Crypt Beckettii. I don't know. Actually, I haven't used this one in a long time, so I don't think I've ever used it in a high-tech setup. So I'm curious to see how this one is going to develop. Again, I have 3 pots, so 1, 2, and then the final one is going to go underneath here. I think that's a good spot for it. Slightly shaded, but should be okay. The third crypt was an in vitro pot, so it's still very small. And it's only going to grow to about 10 centimeters, so it should stay slightly smaller than these two. So I'm going to put it a little bit more in the foreground. So over here, for example, we can put a portion underneath this piece of wood here. This next plant is a new favorite. I like it a lot. It's Laganandra Boldii Red. I have 2 pots for this. I'm only going to plant it in one position. So it's going to be like a nice focal point. I think a layout like this really needs some Anubias. So I've got some really nice Anubias Nana Bonsai. Got 5 pots of this and I'm going to try to wedge it in between the cracks of the wood and the rocks. Okay, so I've used a lot of dwarf hairgrass in the foreground and to the side. I've also ordered a few pots of the normal hairgrass. And I'm going to use this basically over here and also on the left side over there, just behind or just next to the dwarf hairgrass. And this is hopefully going to accentuate that triangular composition. I think it's starting to look really good. So we can now fill in the rest of the areas with more dwarf hairgrass. So we still have an empty patch over there, some more empty patches, along the front here. And then we can move on to the background, I guess. Okay, moving on to the background. I was planning to have 4 different stem plants in the background, but I think something went wrong with the order because I'm missing 1 stem plant. It's no big deal though. We can just add it later. Yeah, the plan was to start in the corner with the Hygrophila polysperma, then move on to a red one, move on to a slightly orange stem plant, and then finish with a green one again. So we have green, red, orange, green, and then the green carpet. So it's still the plan, but yeah, I just have to wait for the other stem plant. So yeah, first one going in, Hygrophila polysperma. This is, I think it's probably one of the most popular aquarium plants. Very, very fast growing as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if I can manage to keep it, maintain it properly, keep it trimmed, or if it's just going to take over too fast, but we'll see. Hopefully with a nice lean dosing routine, it will not be too fast. Moving on to the Ludwigia palustris super red. Probably one of my favorite red stem plants. Okay, and then the third stem plant is the Rotala rotundifolia Laos. Really like this one. Quite an easy plant as well. It's going to be like a nice orange color to the leaves. Okay, it's background planted as well. I'm wondering if up until this point some of you have wondered where are the Java ferns? Like, surely you must be using Java ferns in this layout, right? You're absolutely right, but I got the Java ferns right here. These are my Java ferns. Let me just explain. I had a lot of Java fern in my 70-liter Scapers tank, and I'm planning to take the tank down, replace it with something else. But of course I didn't want to throw away the Java ferns. I wanted to use them in here. But I made a mistake in the tank by mixing two different types of Java ferns. I thought it would look natural, but actually I didn't really like it. So I used Trident and the Mini. So I wanted to separate them, but of course very difficult. Everything is grown together and intertwined. So I separated the Trident and basically cut off all the leaves and just bunched a few rhizomes together. I'm going to use it in this tank. Of course, you're not going to see it in the first week to 2 weeks, but surely after a month we're going to start seeing new growth and it's going to look very good in a little bit of time. Okay, so I've got 3 of these Trident Java fern rhizome bunches. Hopefully it stays that way. Maybe we'll add a drop of super glue. I'm thinking one in the center here maybe. Let's do another one on this side as well. And just like this layout can't be without Java ferns, I think it also can't be without moss. So I was thinking a lot about how to apply this, if I'm going to tie it or if I'm going to glue it, but tying it is just very difficult, especially because the hardscape is already in place. So I'm just going to glue a little bit of moss to some branches and then call it a day. And it is now the next day. Things are looking good. We had a few stem plant bunches that floated to the surface, but we can fix that in a minute. Last night I also swapped the light around, so we now have the cable on the left side, so it's kind of a little bit more neat over here. And on this side we have just a completely clear view, so really enjoying that. Now there's a few things that we still need to do today to make sure that this tank gets the best possible start, with the best possible plant growth and the least amount of problems. I've already put the light on a timer, so I'm going for 8 hours and I think it's roughly 50% intensity. We still need to add the CO2. Of course, this is a high-tech setup, so we need to get the CO2 going. We need to do water changes because we've used AQUASOIL as a substrate. We need to do quite a lot of water changes, so I'm going to be doing like 50% every day for the first week and every other day for the second week, and so on and so on. Besides that, we need to add some beneficial bacteria to the setup. And there's one more thing that I want to do that I've actually never done before, but you guys are going to see that in a minute. Okay, so I'm currently draining the tank. Now to make sure that everybody understands why we need to do these water changes, I just did a water test for ammonia. And as you can see, it's light green. This is supposed to be yellow. Right now we have an ammonia level of 1 milligram per liter, which is quite a lot considering that I only filled this tank up yesterday late at night and it's now like quite early in the morning. So just imagine if you don't do water changes for a couple of days, So water changes once per day for the first week, every other day for the second week, every second day for the third week, and so on and so on. Next up, let's replant those floating bunches. Okay, plants are replanted. Now while the tank is still draining, we can also start working on the CO2 system. On the big shallow, I was using an inline CO2 reactor. But I think in this tank, I'm just going to go for a simple CO2 diffuser. Here we go. CO2 is working. Bubble counter installed. I love those shiny things, you know, just looks really cool. So the tubing goes in the cabinet from the back side. And then over here we have the CO2 bottle with the CO2 regulator just behind the filter. Okay, so that's done. I'm also filling the tank back up again. There was a little bit more than the 50% water change, but it doesn't matter. If you just do big water changes, then you're fine. I'm also just using tap water, by the way. I'm not using RO water. Actually, most of my tanks have tap water. Just a few of them have RO, but if I would have to use RO in this tank, that would be an insane amount. So no, just tap water. And this whole return pump situation, this thing right here is just an old filter inlet from a JBL filter. Attached to that I have a long garden hose. This hose goes to the kitchen, and in the kitchen I have a pump in my sink. So that's just pumping the water right in, straight from the tap. I don't have to dechlorinate the water. I'm just trying to sort of match the temperatures to what the temperature is in the tank. I'm using a heater already. The heater is set to 23 degrees Celsius. So yeah, I think that's it. Let's move on to the next step. So now that we've installed the CO2 system, it's also very important to add a CO2 drop checker, just so we know if we're injecting the correct amount of CO2. So I'm going to add this on the opposite side of the CO2 diffuser. So I'm just going to add it here next to the CO2, next to the filter outflow. Just like so, and hopefully within a few hours this will turn nice and green. Okay, water change is done. We've added the plants, we've added the CO2. I mentioned earlier that I want to add something that I've never done before. And that's actually to add an air pump. I want to run an air pump on this tank at night. And basically I want to increase the oxygen levels at night. So what happens during the day is we inject a lot of CO2, and that helps the plants to grow, and the plants will produce oxygen. But at night the plants actually take in oxygen. So at night the oxygen levels kind of drop a little bit. And that's not really good for the beneficial bacteria in this tank, because they need a lot of oxygen as well. And of course the fish, later on we're going to add fish, we want to make sure that they get a lot of oxygen. So yeah, I want to run an air pump at night, and the idea for this basically came from the ADA gallery in Japan. Because over there, what happens at night, once the lights turn off, they actually raise the lily pipe outflow. So then they get more surface agitation, and then they bring in more oxygen in the aquarium. But I don't want to be like moving the lily pipe up and down every single day, so I'm gonna try an air pump. Okay, so we got an air pump. This one is supposed to be super silent, and I just tested, and it really is. We've got some tubing, we've got an air stone, and we've got a check valve. Now, I'm not going to be using this air stone, I'm actually going to use something else. I got myself an air diffuser, also from AQUASOIL, very similar to the CO2 diffuser. And this one is supposed to make the air bubbles very fine as well, because with a normal air stone, once the bubbles rise up to the surface, they kind of splash a lot of water. That's what I want to avoid. So hopefully with this air diffuser, we're not going to have that issue. Not sponsored or anything, I just bought this with my own money, so yeah, let's just test it out. So the air diffuser actually has a green ceramic disc. Very interesting. I'm gonna place it in the back left corner, right, because I don't really want to see it too much. But I'm thinking we just do a little test run first where we can see it properly. So let's just add it here, connect it to the pump, and then see how it works. Here we go. Definitely is very small bubbles. Quite impressed with that. Over here I have the pump. And well, I can't hear it, I only hear the filter humming. So yeah, I'll leave a link for this in the video description as well if you want to pick one up. Yeah, so I'm going to place it here in the back left corner. And then I'm going to put the pump on a timer. I'm thinking to just have it come on as soon as the light turns off. And then stop as soon as the CO2 turns on basically. So yeah, quite long, but it doesn't really consume a lot of electricity, so that's fine. If you are going to be doing the same thing, make sure that you do add that check valve, because once it turns off, water can start flowing back into this system and it can actually drain your tank quite a bit, so you want to make sure you avoid that. So I think we're basically almost done, and now we just need to wait for this tank to get cycled so we can add in the fish. Super excited about that. To make sure that we can add in the fish rather quickly, I'm going to add some beneficial bacteria. So here I have Seachem stability. These are just beneficial bacteria in a bottle. We can just add a little bit to the water column. We don't need much, and hopefully then they will start colonizing in the substrate and in the filter, and yeah, just help speed up the cycling process. Of course, we need to make sure the plants start growing as well, and for that I'm going to add some fertilizer. Now we already have quite a lot of nutrients in the substrate, so we don't really need a lot of fertilizer. So I'm going to start dosing the APT0, and this is basically just micronutrients and potassium, because the substrate will mostly release some nitrate and some phosphate, but not really like potassium and micronutrients and iron, stuff like that. So I'm gonna start dosing this. The recommended dosage is 3 milliliters per 100 liters daily. This tank is 180 liters, but I mean, it's still, yeah, I mean, the plants still need to establish and start growing, so we don't need a full dose yet, I'm thinking. So I'll probably just start with half a dose. So it's now been more or less 1 month since the start of this aquarium. It's starting to look pretty good. Plants still need to grow in a little bit more, but kind of past the ugly phase now. I've also added in some more fish, and I'm really excited about these new additions. So I've added in 6 of these little guys. They're called the African butterfly cichlids. And I think these fish are like the perfect dwarf cichlid for a planted tank, because they don't really dig into the substrate. They're very tolerant of different water parameters. They're not super aggressive either. They don't grow too big. And they should be very easy to breed as well. So super excited about them. They're not really, they already have quite some color, but they should definitely color up a lot more. They've only been in here for like 3 days now. So yeah, really very excited about these fish. Now after about 3 weeks, something interesting happened with this aquarium as well. I basically got a huge explosion or infestation with these really tiny bugs. You can kind of see them on the rock there. And these are called sea shrimp. And I've had a few of them here and there, some other things as well, like I've seen them before, but the amount that I currently have in this aquarium is pretty insane. I was kind of hoping that the African butterfly cichlids would eat them, but it seems like they haven't really done that at all. So these sea shrimp, apparently they feed off waste organics in detritus, so kind of makes sense. Like around 3 weeks I had a huge, thick slime layer on the wood. So of course those sea shrimp were like feasting on that and just multiplying like crazy. So I'm hoping that now that the slime is gone and I'm just not feeding too much, so there's not really much food left for them, I'm hoping that their numbers will slowly start to decline, because well, they're not really annoying or anything, but yeah, it's just kind of weird to see all these tiny bugs crawling around into the substrate. And there we have it, the new Skylight Hyperspot FM. Really happy with that. I like that it's the smaller unit, so we don't have this light spill on the edges. Just looks better, you know. This is a little bit thicker though, but I don't mind that. And I'm really happy that they still kept the mirror. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see, but you can see it over here. It's just a cool little detail, you know. Okay, back to the present time. The last clip that you saw was from end of April when the tank was just 1 month old. So let's see how it looks now, roughly 3 months later. So I'm really happy with how this tank is looking right now. I don't think it's as peak yet. I think there's still things that we can improve, but in general, I think it looks really good. Now, it definitely hasn't been a smooth journey. I think in around 2 months, this tank was actually starting to get a lot of black bush algae. I think it was multiple causes for that. First of all, we had a very early summer, so at around May, beginning of June, we had like a really warm temperature, so it was very hot in the house, and warm water always leads to more algae issues. Another thing was the cichlids. They were actually breeding a lot, so because I was kind of feeding them more to kind of compensate for the loss of energy. So I was actually adding a lot of frozen food into this tank, which probably caused a bit of a nutrient imbalance, I guess. Another thing was the light. I think I was kind of underestimating how powerful this light is, so I was just running it too strong, at a too high percentage, and I should have dimmed it down a bit more. And also the CO2. So you saw in this video that I used the CO2 diffuser on this side of the tank, and I think the CO2 distribution just wasn't optimal, and because there's some plants in the background were also not really growing properly. So after I switched to an inline diffuser, things just really cleared up basically. So in terms of the setup and the equipment, things haven't really changed that much. I have removed that air pump. I mean, the idea was nice, but it just wasn't really working properly. I was still getting quite a bit of an oil film on top of the water surface. So instead I've just switched to a intake with a skimming portion, and now the surface is always nice and clean. The oxygen exchange is good, and yeah, I think that was just the idea with the air pump was nice, but I think the skimmer just works better. Yeah, and like I said, I've now switched to an inline CO2 diffuser. This one is from CO2 Art, so it goes directly from the regulator to the outflow. Now that's been working very well. Really happy with the Oase Biomaster as well. I clean the pre-filter maybe once a month or so. Yeah, I think I've done it like 3 or 4 times now, so it's very easy to maintain. I don't actually use the heater at the moment just because we're in summer and it's still about 23 degrees Celsius in the house. Then this side of the cabinet has turned into a bit of a mess. I really need to sort this out. I am planning to add a dosing pump. I got this one from Ecotech Marine. I got it from Bulk Reef Supply. And I'm planning to add this one because we're going on holiday soon, and I just want to keep adding liquid fertilizer even when we're gone for almost 2 weeks. I am still dosing the APT0, so this is a very lean fertilizer, and sometimes I'm also adding a little bit of this, the Denla Liquid Plus. This is like a complete liquid fertilizer, also has nitrate and phosphate. Then I've also made a few changes inside the tank. I mean, of course, the Hardscape is still exactly the same. I've just added a few plants. The most obvious one is, of course, the Vallisneria with the reddish, brownish, bronze leaves. I think that looks really good, really happy with that. I've also added a little bit more Trident Java fern. You can see a new bunch over here in the corner. Yeah, the Trident fern on this side is just not doing very well. You can see this one over here has like some brown spots on it. It's just not growing, it's actually melting, so not sure what's going on over there. And then one more plant is this water lily over here. This one is called Hydroclase nymphoides. I think it's like a South American water lily, and this one is about to flower, so that's really cool. Fish have actually all stayed the same. The only thing I've done is I've removed the female honey gourami. So currently we only have the male in here. I just don't see him at the moment. Yeah, I've removed the female because I think they were kind of fighting. The female was a little bit roughed up, so I've just moved her to a different tank. And then I've added 4 Siamese algae eaters, just to kind of help with the BBA a little bit. And of course the stars of the show, the African butterfly cichlids. These guys are doing really good. Still have all 6 of them. And they've laid eggs, they have had babies a couple of times. It's always like the same pair. I think it's this male and then the female that's behind there. Yeah, it's always the same pair. And then they have babies and they last for a couple of weeks, but then eventually they just get eaten, you know. But yeah, this is just a really cool dwarf cichlid. And yeah, I've had them for 3 months now. I don't think they've really grown much actually, so yeah, they kind of stay this size, I guess. Yeah, just a really cool dwarf cichlid, very easy to keep, eats everything, is not fussy about water parameters, so yeah, I highly recommend to give these guys a try if you can get them in your area. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I don't think this tank is at its peak yet. I think there's still a few things that we can improve. Mainly plant density. So for example, the Trident ferns, I'd love to have them a little bit more dense. Also the red stem plants and the Hygrophila in the back left corner, they could get a little bit more dense. But besides that, I'm really happy with that. We do also still have a little bit of algae in here, so it's a bit hard to see, but along the front glass here in the hairgrass carpet, there's some blue-green algae. And that's the only location where it is. It doesn't appear anywhere else inside the tank, but it just keeps coming back here. So I'm thinking of taking a syringe with a needle and actually filling it with some liquid carbon and basically just injecting that all along the foreground. I haven't done that yet because it's probably going to give us some die-off on the hairgrass carpet, which of course I didn't want to have before I make this video. So I'll probably do that right after. And then there's still a bit of black marsh algae here and there as well. And of course we can't have a completely algae-free aquarium, but it could be a little bit less. Yeah guys, that's it for now. Really hope you enjoyed this longer build video. If you did enjoy, then don't forget to smash that like button. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.